Hi, Rick. Welcome to Funnel Vision. Thrilled to have you on today and have you share your tips and expertise with our community of sales professionals.
Hi, Alana. Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Great. Yeah, excited about it. So, start out by telling us what's your one game-changing tactic that you rely on to build strong client relationships?
Oh, nothing like starting right out with a with a zinger question. That's a great question. I think more than anything, it's to give a damn early and often. Everyone's looking for tech, tools, tactics, the edge. But at the end of the day, I think empathy still wins. People buy from people, and I try to understand their pain. What the internal blockers are, what their wins look like, what's going to make you look good in this role. How can I help you get there? And I try to go from vendor, which nobody needs another vendor, let's face it, to really being more of that trusted advisor. I know that's kind of a canned term, but that's what we work towards. And with the amount of longevity, I guess, that I've had in my career, I think I bring, I think I bring as much from my losses as from my victories. And I think, when people hire me or, we're interacting, there's more to lend to them maybe from those losses than anything. But at the end of the day, yeah, people buy from people, and I just try to, try to understand, and as if I were meeting them at the supermarket, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think what you said there about losses is so true. The longer the more experience you have, that's great. But really, like your true learning and kind of growing and being able the expertise that you provide comes from, yes, sure, it comes from the wins, but you learn so much from those losses and doing things, incorrectly or, kind of different things that you've had to overcome. And there's so much to learn in that. And so being able to leverage that as a trusted advisor and, person that has the expertise, I think that's great.
It's so true. And I mean, you want to be authentic, right? Everybody goes through those peaks and valleys, and we can learn from each other.
For sure, for sure. What's the best piece of sales advice that you've received and how has it changed your approach?
I remember it like it was yesterday. I came out of college, and I'll date myself here a little bit, but when I went into my office fresh out of college, I walked in. There were two things in my office on my desk. There was a telephone that doesn't look anything like the phones we use today, and there was an ashtray. There was no computer and so this is the early 90s, right? And client server technology was just coming out, and computers. And I remember my first boss, Jeff Halverson. He pulled me in his office and he said, Rick, people buy from people. And he really, over time, over 5 years that I worked with him, he really taught me a lot about interacting with people, trying to get to know them. And back then there was a lot of, I worked selling technology to the automotive industry. So there was a lot of lunches, and even the martini lunch was still kind of there. It was starting to go away, but we really got to sit across from our customers quite often, and if nothing else, have lunch, and get to know them. So really taking, again, going back to being authentic and trying to understand where they're coming from, and is there something that I can do to really help them get to where they're looking to go.
Yeah, for sure. And there's such a difference, like you said, I when I started out too, there, in recruiting and in sales, like we were still faxing resumes, right, to our clients. And so it was, a completely different world. But to that, you know, there is so much of a difference because in the past, I really got to meet all of my clients. We would go into the office, we would meet for
Frequent
lunch, we would have, kind of these
difference
closer
by
relationships.
speech,
So like
speaking
any like thoughts or advice like now when
here,
you're, so much
astropetti
is
is
virtual. Like my clients that are close to me, I'm in their office as much as I can. But clients that are, so many of my clients are spread across the country and even the world.
Mhm.
So building those relationships via, video is a little bit harder. So any advice on how to do that?
Well, I'm still old school in that respect. I mean, I work on various different hybrid technology platforms for interfacing with clients, but really the listening skills. I mean, we all have so much we want to tell the client and show, and at the end of the day, you really have to just turn on, your take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth, so to speak, and really listen to what they're saying and try to come back. Now, one thing I will say though is in the business I am in with AI, the technology has come so much further with being able to record, the interaction and then have AI basically boil it all down to what's important. We do get a little bit of a lean in on that, but still at the end of the day, I think we have to really turn our tentacles on and listen.
For sure, for sure. And so talking about AI, AI is shaking up the sales world, and how do you see it, changing the game and the future of sales?
Well, it's kind of like the new co-pilot, right? And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about AI, and there's going to be autonomous AI that may be here sooner than we think. But for right now, really part of our tagline at Care Advisors is human centric. So if you think of it, think about riding a tandem bicycle, right? And you've got AI and yourself on the bike. Well, you want to be the one in front driving and really making sure you know where it's going, AI on the back. Because if you flip the script on that and you've got AI driving it, you could be riding your bicycle to the store, and the next thing you know, AI starts to hallucinate, and you're on a rocket ship flying with AI driving. So that's a probably a large exaggeration there, but it's really important to really, take the human first approach. It's the probably the most important thing. And with what it's doing right now with virtual agents and visitor AI, I mean, I could tell who's been on my website, how much time they spent on that page. Uh, and I can even extract contact information. The technology is that good. So I try not to stalk people, but I certainly could tell who's interested in what, and that's a big edge. It's come a long way from, again, the Dun and Bradstreet days where you had a book of just static information, and you'd have to call somebody and try to go from there.
Yeah. Oh, I spent many years doing that, and all the the book of lists, all across the Baltimore book of lists, Washington book of lists, and just going through them. And yeah, it's definitely come a long way since then. Um, what do you think is something that salespeople should stop doing immediately if they want to become more successful?
Well, I know you can relate to this. My first 20 years of my career was in the staffing, the workforce management industry, and it was basically technology, IT, and engineering. But I notice it in the recruiting industry. We've come a long way from the fax, but the fax machine era, we really got to know the customer and the candidate. And now there's a lot of spraying and praying going on, and it's just very impersonal. It's unprofessional. So cold emails, just spam LinkedIn messages, one size fits none approaches. Nobody likes that, and they don't work. So why lean in on that? If your approach feels like a breakup text, it's short, cold, and mass sent. You're really not selling. You're just kind of ghosting everybody, including yourself. You're not giving yourself any chance. So I do see a lot of that. I think technology is being misused in that respect, and it's a shame because there's a better way to do it.
For sure. Yeah, like you're saying, human first, you could use the tools, but you've got to lead them. And it can't just be that like cold, spray and pray,
Yeah.
spamming. So yeah, absolutely. And so let's talk about, sales talent, and hiring salespeople and good salespeople is tough. Do you have like go-to strategy or any advice for spotting like rock star great salespeople?
It's one of the most difficult things I've ever experienced in my career. I've interviewed people, and I've got the experience, right? And I know what the job takes. And I've made some mishires, and I've hired some great people too. Uh, but I really look for the things that they really should have learned long before maybe even they went to college. So things like integrity, work ethic, I can't teach them that. They're not going to get that in their 20s, 30s, 40s, or whatever it may be. So whatever I can do to find resilience, I'm really not look. I'll look at a resume, I'll go from the back and move forward and just kind of get an idea of how they've progressed. But what I'm really looking for, one question I'll ask them is, tell me about one of your biggest losses in your career. And what did that look like? And if they start to deflect and say, well, that company is known and, or my boss, if they own it and say, well, and you'll see this in great athletes, you'll see, just fantastic athletes lose a championship game and they immediately say, well, I could have done this better. And so I look for things like that. You can't teach that. You're not going to ever find that on a resume, or I don't know, maybe you can find it through some kind of a test, but certainly difficult to see. And that's what I look for. If I can spot that, then I know I've got somebody I want to work with.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's actually one of the questions that we ask as well, when we're interviewing salespeople is to walk us through, a loss or a time when they did lose a big deal or when they didn't win it. And you're right. It's seeing how they respond to the question and what they talk about versus like almost what they're saying and what how they lost it and why they lost it, but just in kind of the response and reading between the lines is so important in that and kind of understanding who they are as a person and then what did they do next? Did they, throw their hands up and give up, or did they take those lessons and turn them into, kind of the win next time? So
Absolutely.
it's important to kind of dig deep on that
Yeah, agree.
for sure. So Rick, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what you do and where people can find you.
Okay, well, I'm Rick Anderson, Senior Managing Partner and Chief Sales Officer at Care Advisors. I've spent, I'll say 20 plus years. We can assume it's longer than that. In sales and leading enterprise sales teams. I've got, I think, an equal balance between startups, tech startups. I've got about half a dozen under my belt now, a couple very successful ones, and several that, again, I learned a lot from, as well as a lot of global enterprise experience as well. So the big names, and certainly grew up with the client server that morphed into cloud, that morphed into SaaS world. Now we're in AI, and I absolutely love AI. So the big takeaway for me, anytime I'm talking to anybody about myself, is for the first time in my career, I am really interested and invested in the tech that I'm selling. And I can't really say that was true, but now, I mean, I'm a consumer. Every day I'm talking to suppliers, folks that build tools, processes, systems, anything related to AI, because it's changing so quickly. So to get back to the original question, yeah, quite a few years in tech sales, and really my goal was just to help teams grow smarter and work a little bit smarter and not harder. So you can find me on LinkedIn, careadvisors.net, which we're going through a whole new branding. Actually, this week, I think we're turning on the new website and the new CRM and the new lead gen and all that. So that's pretty exciting. And so, yeah. And, if we're getting together, I love coffee and I love animals. So we've got six. We are an animal rescue family. So I guess we'll close with that. I'm actually going to an animal adoption event in about 2 hours, and we're fostering one right now that we're going to take with us and hope that little one gets adopted. But I'll say this, I'm a little bit of a soft heart with these fosters. The reason we have 3 dogs and 3 cats is because I'm a foster failure, basically, is what it is. So
I get that. I feel like that would happen to us if we tried to foster dogs. We would keep all of them because we've got 3 dogs and a snake. So and
oh,
plus five kids. So yeah, it's all a constantly constant chaos over here. But I hear you. If I let my kids foster a dog, there would be no way we, we'd be able to give it back. I know it. So I feel it.
yeah.
Well, yeah, well, thanks for coming on, Rick. It was great chatting with you. Appreciate your time and all of the advice you shared. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alana. I really enjoyed it.